President Joe Biden, the 46th president from the Oval Office. Every president leaving office doesn't deliver an address like this. In fact, this was only the 11th official farewell address to the nation. President Biden starting with the announcement of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, months in the making, that is expected to see hostages returned in the first hours of the next administration, much like the Iran hostages were returned on Inauguration Day in the transition from Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan. President Biden warning about an oligarchy forming with wealthy donors affecting policy, having too much power. He harkened back to Dwight D. Eisenhower's farewell address and warnings in 1961. The president saying it will take time for America to feel the full impact of all his administration did. However, Americans voted in November for a second Trump administration that will try to undo what it can and definitively move in a very different direction. Please stay tuned to Fox News Channel and this Fox station for continuing coverage of news out of Washington and around the world, and for complete coverage of Inauguration Day, Monday. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. Good night.
Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you. This is the ceasefire agreement I introduced last spring. Today, Hamas and Israel have agreed to that ceasefire agreement and the whole ending the war. You know, those of you who have followed the negotiations can attest the road to this deal has not been easy. I've worked in foreign policy for decades. This is one of the toughest negotiations I've ever experienced. And we reached this point because of the pressure that Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Hamas's longtime leader, Sinwar, was killed. Hamas's strongest supporter, Iran, launched attacks on Israel. And those attacks failed after my administration organized a coalition of nations to stop them. And after I ordered the U.S. ships and planes to come to Israel's defense, we also shaped Israel's strong and calibrated response, destroying Iran's air defenses, but avoiding an escalatory cycle of an all-out war. The United States also organized a coalition of 20 countries to stand up to attacks by the Houthis, including their missile attacks in Israel. Then, Hezbollah, another of Hamas's strongest backers, was significantly weakened on the battlefield, and its leadership was destroyed. With our support, Israel negotiated a ceasefire with them, and after that, Lebanon finally elected a new president who's not beholden to Hezbollah, and he can begin a new chapter for the Lebanese people. All told, these developments in the region, which the United States helped to shape, changed the equation. And so now, the terror network that once protected and sustained Hamas is far weaker. Iran is weaker. Iran is weaker than it's been in decades. Hezbollah is badly degraded. And after more than 15 months of war, Hamas's senior leaders are dead. Thousands of Hamas fighters are dead. And the military formations have been destroyed. With nowhere to turn, Hamas finally agreed to releasing hostages. You know, there was no other way for this war to end than with a hostage deal. And I'm deeply satisfied this day has finally come, for the sake of the people of Israel and the families waiting in agony, and for the sake of the innocent people in Gaza who suffered unimaginable devastation because of the war. And thirdly, I knew this deal would have to be implemented by the next team, so I told my team to coordinate closely with the incoming team to make sure we're all speaking with the same voice, because that's what American presidents do.
Who does the history books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you. Thanks, sir.
When it comes to the involvement of President-elect Trump's team, it has been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line. And it's been critical because, obviously, as I stand here today, this administration's term in office will expire in 5 days. And one of the things that we have always said about this deal is that when you get from stage 1 to stage 2, that the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are the guarantors of this deal. And Egypt and Qatar will push Hamas to stay at the bargaining table and to get from stage 1 to stage 2, and the United States will push Israel to stay at the bargaining table to get from phase 1 and phase 2. So obviously those are promises we cannot make on behalf of the United States for any longer than the next 5 days. And so it's critical that all of the parties to the agreement and the other mediators see that when the United States is in the room making commitments, those are lasting commitments that extend beyond this administration into the next one. I will just say, lastly, I don't know if it's unprecedented to have envoys from an outgoing and an incoming administration sitting at the same table negotiating a ceasefire agreement of this kind. But if it's not unprecedented, it's certainly unusual. And we, of course, thank the Trump team for working with this on this ceasefire agreement. We think it's important that they were at the table. And
I was saddened by the fate of the Palestinian people. They deserve a far better life. They deserve the chance to achieve their extraordinary potential. Palestinians have been trapped in a cycle of terrorism, poverty, and violence, exploited by those seeking to use them as pawns to advance terrorism and extremism.
I just will say one last word, which is, I hope this is my last time at this podium, at least for a little while. I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, the only thing that would bring me back is an unexpected event in the next few days, which, as you all know, is totally possible given everything you've seen over the course of the past years. But if it is, in fact, my last time before you, I just want to say thank you for what you guys do every day. Thank you for putting up with me.
Compared to 4 years ago, America is stronger. Our alliances are stronger. Our adversaries and competitors are weaker. We have not gone to war to make these things happen. During my presidency, I've increased America's power at every dimension. We've increased our diplomatic power. I warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous concentration, and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. The dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
Freedom is indivisible, and when one man is enslaved, all are not free.
For freedom is not the property of one generation. It's the obligation of this and every generation. It's our duty to protect it and expand it and pass it undiminished to those still unborn.